Folks, welcome to my video. What I'd like to do today is share with you the process I used to create a microphotography machine for both biological microphotography and mineralogical microphotography. Can be used for other things as well, but those are the two things that I am most interested in. And before I get started with the actual process, I'd like to take you back in time a little bit. When I was in second grade, I picked up a library book that talked about little microorganisms swimming in the water, and I was fascinated with that. And so I asked Santa Claus for a microscope for Christmas, and I got the microscope, and I couldn't wait till spring arrived because we had a stream down the street. So I went down to that stream and I got a jar of water and I brought it back, and I got my little dropper and put a drop of that pond water on a microscope slide and put it under my microscope. I'll never forget racking in that slide view and seeing a myriad of little creatures swimming around on that glass slide. That was my introduction really formally to the micro world. And I must say, even to this day, I am still fascinated by protozoa and all the different species there are to enjoy in watching their behavior under a microscope. Well, one of my other early hobbies was rock collecting. And I got into rock collecting and started getting specimens, and as time went on and I became an adult, I discovered through my reading that of the thousands and thousands of species of minerals, most of them never grow crystals big enough to be appreciated with anything less than a microscope. They only grow very minute crystals, and so I started collecting micromounts, and I have many hundreds of these today of many of the different species of minerals from around the world. And I'll tell you what, if you want to do some oohs and ahs, put some of these under a microscope. It's like, if you remember, those of you who are as old as me looking through a Viewmaster, those stereoscopic views, when you look through a stereo microscope, that's kind of the feeling, and it's like a whole nother world. Well, come forward a few years in my life, and I discovered that it was fun to look at things, but I had gotten into photography, and I thought, you know what? I'd really like to take some pictures of the things that I'm enjoying under my microscope so that I can actually go share them with other people. And so I got some adapters, my camera, and started taking pictures. But something really happened that accelerated my interest in microphotography when cell phones came about. Not long after cell phones came out, somebody invented a little adapter that you could screw on the objective lens and use your cell phone to take pictures of the images coming through the eyepiece. And this was very, very easy to set up and get very, very high quality pictures. In fact, here are some examples of some of the pictures that I took with my cell phone, both mineralogical and biological. Okay, as you can see, you can get really pretty good results with a cell phone, and you know what? That might be just enough for many people to, enjoy the micro world in terms of taking pictures and sharing them with others. Well, as I started surfing the web specifically for mineral pictures, micro mineral pictures, I started noticing that there were pictures that had an incredible depth of field. I had noticed when I was taking pictures through microscopes that the depth of field on any specimen is very, very shallow. And I did a little bit of research and found that they were using software to actually take images at different points of focus on a specimen. So they'd take the lowest area that was in focus, and then they would take exposures all the way up to the top of a specimen where that part of the specimen would be in focus. They would stack all of those pictures together, and then they would have an image where everything is in focus. And some of those images were absolutely breathtaking. And so I decided, well, I'd love to do that. So long story short, I did some research and found that people were building microphotography machines. And some of the people were good enough to share some of the details on how they actually put these things together. So from the various sources I studied, I pulled things together and kind of cobbled up a plan, taking the best of the best and throwing in a few of my own ideas, and then decided that I was going to go ahead and construct my own microphotography machine. So what I did, being a teacher for a living all my life, I love to learn, but then I always love to share what I have learned with other people. So what I've done, folks, is I documented the entire process of how I built this. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to go ahead and walk you through that process. Okay, the first part of the process that I used was to create a focusing stage. The part of the machine that would allow me to take those exposures at various depths from the lowest to the highest part of a specimen so that I could stack those. And the way that people had constructed those was by buying used microscopes and taking the focusing stage part of that microscope to create their focusing stage. So I went online and I started looking around, and there's a lot of garbage for sale, so you got to be really, really careful. I actually ended up procuring this one online. It was from a school back east that had upgraded their microscopes, and so they were selling all of their used microscopes. This one is a Nikon monocular, and it came with 3 objective lenses. You can see there on the turret. And I purchased this. I was assured it was in great working order, and when I got it, I took it out and I cleaned it thoroughly. I literally just cleaned it just so it was just absolutely pristine. And of course, having had microscopes before, that was a process that I was very familiar with. So anyway, let me just give you all a word of advice if you're going to do this. Do not buy a piece of garbage. Do not go for the cheapest thing you can find. You want to make sure that all the mechanisms on the focusing stage, both the up and down motions, the coarse and fine adjustments, and also the adjustments to move around glass slides on top of the stage if you're going to do biological photography with your microphotography machine. Make sure that all works. So you want to buy something that is in good condition. Okay, the first part of creating this focusing stage is I had to take the microscope apart. So I started with the top part of the microscope, took the turret off, took the eyepiece assembly off. This is a very important point that I want to make here. When you purchase a used microscope, if you can find one that has the objective lenses still on it, you'll save yourself a bunch of money. Now, I must tell you that lots of people are finding that when you buy used good quality microscopes, you can take them apart depending on the model and the brand, and you can actually sell the parts for a good profit. So if you can find a used microscope that still has those objective lenses with it, you're going to save yourself some good money. And again, this was a Nikon microscope, and it came with 3 really good quality objectives, so I kept those. Okay, the next step in the process is I had to determine where to cut that tower off. In other words, how much of that tower can I cut off without affecting the mechanism inside that operates the focusing stage. So what I did is I took the microscope apart on the back, and I determined how high the machinery inside went. And then after I determined that, I took a Sharpie and I marked all the way around the microscope so that I would have a clear cutting line when I got out to my shop. Once I was out in my shop, I got my angle grinder and took off the grinding wheel and put a cutoff wheel on it. And then I very carefully followed that line around the top of the tower and cut off the top part of the tower. The next thing I did is I got a label maker, and I just put me some little reminder instructions on the side of the microscope. you know, if you turn the wheel, you're going up, and if you turn it this way, you're going down, just so that I don't have to think about that while I'm taking pictures. And then I also marked the upper limit of the focusing stage and the lower limit on the tower, just for quick reference. I finished off my focusing assembly by taking a little piece of artist's mat board. That's another one of my interests, is drawing and painting, so I have mat board laying around. Cut a little square of that, painted it satin black, and I capped off the top of the tower so that things looked finished. And when that was done, I had completed my focusing stage. Okay, the next step in creating my microphotography machine was creating a stage with a rail beam. So, I purchased a Canon compatible bellows, a 400mm rail, and 2 quick release plate clamp adapters. Now, let me just go into a little bit of detail here because it's important. Number one, when you purchase a bellows assembly, it's make specific. So, since I have Canon cameras, I had to buy a bellows system that was compatible with Canon cameras. So make sure when you purchase a bellows, you get one compatible with your brand of camera. The next thing that I really needed to pay a little bit more attention to was the length of the rail. A lot of the setups that I had seen used shorter rails because people were photographing just one type of thing and did not need a whole lot of travel in their bellows assembly. On the other hand, I'm taking pictures of little tiny clusters of crystals on great big rocks, and also taking pictures of micros on little tiny pieces of rock, and then biological microscope slides. So I needed a wide range of travel for my bellows assembly. So I found this really nice 400mm long rail and purchased that. The next thing I did is I had to use a little bit of ingenuity to attach the bellows to the plate clamp adapters, a little bit of epoxy and some washers and so forth, and I was able to create an assembly, a bellows assembly that would travel up and down that rail. Next, I purchased a Canon compatible adapter for my bellows for the other end, the non-camera end, that would accept microscope objectives. Now, most people who use a bellows assembly with a camera use camera lenses on the other end, and I'm going to do that too, but I'm also going to be taking pictures of really, really small objects, and so I purchased this adapter so that I could use the microscope objectives that I have with my microphotography machine. Next, I decided that I wanted to have a wide range of magnification options with my machine, so I purchased a couple of additional microscope objectives to go with the 3 that had come with my Nikon microscope. And now I have a set consisting of 2 times, 4 times, 10 times, 20 times, and finally 40 times objectives. Okay, the next thing I did is I went to the lumber yard and I purchased some lumber to build the focusing stage platform with the beam for the rail. Now, a little bit about wood. I did a little bit of research and found out that hardwoods dampen vibrations a little bit better than soft woods do. And I found out that probably the best hardwood for that is maple. Maple is prohibitively expensive. If I had bought that for something like this, it would have been an arm and a leg. So I bought probably the cheapest hardwood that you can use, poplar. And I figured that for what I was going to use the wood for, it would work really, really well. So I determined how long the beam needed to be to accommodate optimal placement of my 400mm bellows rail. And then I determined how long and wide the platform had to be to accommodate the focusing stage that I had constructed. Okay, here's another really important point. A lot of times when we buy lumber from a lumber yard, we assume that it has been milled so that it is square. Okay? That is not the case, and you have to be very careful, and it was not the case with the poplar lumber that I had purchased. So I used my table saw to square up the lumber, and then I cut 2 identical pieces of wood for the platform base. 11 inches wide times 17 inches long, or 28 centimeters wide times 43 centimeters long. Next, I used my chop saw to trim the 2.5 inch or 6.5 centimeter square beam stock to 22 inches or 56 centimeter. And I had a little bit left over of that stock, so I used the remainder of that square stock to cut a beam support 11 inches long or 28 centimeters. Next thing I did is I used a T-square and a triangle to create a grid pattern on the bottom of the platform, taped it together, and then went into my drill press and drilled pilot holes for all the screws, and then screwed those 2 pieces of lumber together to provide a base for my micro photography machine. Next thing I did is I secured the beam and the beam support to that base, and made sure everything was very, very stout. To finish off my platform, I painted it with satin black and attached the Bellows rail to the upright beam. And then I turned the whole assembly over and I attached some little rubber feet to each corner, again to help in dampening vibrations. Next, I attached my DSLR to the Bellows assembly and attached the Bellows assembly to the rail. And then finally, I placed the focusing stage on the platform and aligned the light port in the focusing stage with the microscope objective on the Bellows. This was for the biological photography. Last thing I did is I connected my DSLR to my laptop and opened Backyard EOS. Now, Backyard EOS is a program that I purchased years ago to control my Canon cameras for astrophotography in my backyard observatory. And I got thinking as I was building this how I was going to control my exposures. And I got thinking of Backyard EOS, and so I hooked it up, and long story short, it works absolutely fantastic. And so I highly recommend Backyard EOS to control your exposures for microphotography. And so after I had that all hooked up, I adjusted my specimen and I adjusted the lighting, of course, which is a science and an art all of itself, could take up many, many videos. And then I tested my completed microphotography machine, and I have to tell you, I was absolutely thrilled with the performance of my microphotography machine. Now, I'd like to talk about different camera setups for various subjects. My machine can photograph mineral specimens on various sizes of rock. I already told you that previously because I got a longer rail and I can move my Bellows assembly up and down that to accommodate, taking a picture of a fine crystal on a chunk of rock 5 or 6 inches in diameter, clear down to taking pictures of my little micro mounts. For even more versatility, I purchased a reversal ring for my Canon camera so that I could use my standard kit lens and all the other lenses I have for my DSLR as macro lenses by simply turning them around. And those of you out there who have done macro photography for years know that this little trick is a cost-effective way to, get a macro lens without going out and buying a dedicated macro lens. Okay, so we've gotten through the construction of this whole thing, and I'm sure that some of you out there are asking the $64,000 question. So, how good does your micro photography machine work? Does it perform up to expectations? Does it do what you wanted it to do? Well, I guess the best way to answer that question is to show you some of the very first images. These are literally the first images I took with this machine here. And I'd like to start with some pictures of mineral and rock specimens. And I won't narrate them. I'll just go ahead and let you see the pictures, and then we'll meet back here. Okay, hope you liked those. Now, there are others of you watching this video right now that are probably way more interested in this machine's capabilities when it comes to taking pictures of biological specimens. Well, one of the things that I think is really cool about using this machine for biological specimens is that, you know, the depth of the specimen pictures you're taking here are just really, really minute. But still, the depth of field, you can't get the whole object in focus sometimes. So this business of stacking exposures at various focus points, it does incredible things for biological specimens on glass slides. So again, you're saying, well, how fantastic is it? Well, let me show you some pictures, and again, I will let you be the judge. Well, I hope you all enjoyed my little video on how I created my own microphotography machine. You know, again, those were the first pictures I've taken with this thing, and I cannot wait to put it through its paces and learn how to better utilize it. And just like any new piece of machinery, it takes time to really get to know it. But the initial results make me really excited for what I might be able to do down the road. Now, for those of you who may be interested in building a machine of your own, I'm going to put some resources in the description down below that talk about where I picked up some of the parts here so that you can procure them if you'd like to build something kind of like what I've built here. And kind of in closing, what I'd like to just say is this. You know, I've been a teacher all my life, and what I love about teaching is I love to see that light in people's eyes when they learn something new. And being a lifelong learner myself, I get a tremendous amount of joy out of learning new things. And I look at the world as a smorgasbord that I will never live long enough to sample everything there is to learn about this world. But as a teacher, I have found that there is a way to really increase our individual joy exponentially. And that is when we find something that brings us joy. Share it with other people. I think one of the things that I've always enjoyed the most about photography, whether it's microphotography or astrophotography or just regular photography, is that when I take a beautiful image and I share it with others, the comments of the joy that those efforts bring to other people. And so that's one of the reasons that I have always enjoyed photography, is because not only is it something that I can enjoy creating, but it's also something that I can enjoy by sharing with other people. And so for those of you who are thinking, gee, I don't know whether I can tackle something like that or not, I have a little bit of advice for you. This was a challenge for me. And I've spent my life building things with metal and wood, and I actually used to be a construction foreman early in my life. I used to build my own computers, and this presented some challenges for me. And so don't let the specter of a challenge turn you away from maybe trying something like this. My advice to people is always, if you really want to do something, jump in with both feet and go for it. And if you struggle a little bit along the way and you have to maybe take a step back and learn something new to complete your project, so be it. The satisfaction that you have on the other side of tackling something that's a challenge is such a sweet reward for sticking with something and believing in yourself enough to try. Good luck, my friends, and I hope you enjoy the micro world through your machine as much as I'm going to enjoy it through mine.